Welcome to the Distracted Driving Podcast. I'm Sean Genovese.
I'm Rex Williams.
Wow, you rushed it that time.
Still here.
Welcome back. We have an exciting surprise for both of our listeners.
Yeah, I can
today.
hear the excitement in your voice. Maybe.
Yes. We have a very special guest, Andrea Clough. Like tough.
She's tough.
Tough like tough. Clough. Common spelling.
Yeah.
And Andrea, now it's spelled, as we've discussed before, it's spelled Andrea, but it's pronounced Andrea, right?
Yes.
It's spelled for some ears.
Very good.
Yes.
Well, Andrea is the engineer whisperer.
Yes.
But
Hello.
let's not whisper today because we want people to hear us.
She's whispering to me.
Yeah, Rex and I worked. Is it fair to say we worked with you? We worked near you.
We worked around her. We're engineers.
We worked adjacent.
Adjacent
Yeah.
to her. Yes, at one point.
In the same building.
In the same building.
In
There
the
you go.
same building,
That's
in the same,
adjacent.
City, but
We had meetings where we would be together sometimes.
And now Andrea has moved on to become the engineer whisperer. So I want to talk about that and kind of find out a little bit more about how you ended up as the engineer whisperer, because as I recall, you are not by degree an engineer. But before we get to that, I got to tell you guys a story, and then maybe we can get Andrea to comment on it.
Story time.
This is kind of an addendum to what we talked about in a previous episode about the dog poop. What would you say? Dilemma? No, initiative.
The dog poop initiative.
You educated me on the dog poop initiative.
Where's my
Rex.
book? Did you get the book? She told me when I got my book down.
So I actually have video of this, but this is a primarily audio podcast, so I'm not going to bother sharing the video. I'll just describe it. Over the weekend, holiday weekend, and we had some friends and family over, and we were playing cornhole out in the backyard.
I love cornhole. I'm the champion.
And we had a couple of dogs here, geriatric dogs, which is kind of relevant for what happens
They were
next.
older in their time. Yeah.
So one of our friends and his sons had set up the cornhole. They're playing. They're a couple of rounds in, and they don't notice. But after they finish tossing their last bag to the other side, they start walking. And as they start walking over to the other cornhole board, one of the dogs was laying down in the shade next to him, stood up, or like moseyed up, because geriatric dog, and then begins to mosey across the path of the cornhole lane, dropping some landmines along the way, because when you're a geriatric canine, that's how you do it. And at first they didn't notice, so they actually played the next round and tossed the beanbags over. And then as they're walking over, actually, no, I wasn't. I went back and checked the surveillance footage afterwards. What drew my attention is I'm sitting down and I noticed them pick the board up and move it about 5 feet off to the side. And so now they had to, because of how my backyard is, they had to angle both of them. They had to reposition both of them. So now they're at like a diagonal. And then I kind of looked over and I saw a dog walking away, and I saw a little something in the grass. And I said, did they just move the cornhole in order to avoid the dog poop?
Exactly.
And that is exactly what happened. And I started telling the story of the dog poop initiative. It was my brother's dog, so he went and got a bag and went and picked it up.
He wasn't on the one playing?
He was not.
Okay. Yeah.
But I just thought, wow, talk about art imitating science, or life imitating art, or
Yeah,
I'm not quite
it was
sure
a
how
real
that would go, but
experience that happened, that, because it's a book that a guy wrote. It was a real experience for him. And then he's based his whole consulting, like he's like this big time consultant that speaks at companies and goes around, his whole consulting premise
and
on
we
that
just
book.
proved it.
Uh-huh.
Unintentionally proved it, or validated, I should say, the principle. So my question for Andrea, in your work as the engineer whisperer, first of all, have you heard of the Dog Poop Initiative? I know you listened to episode 2. So had you heard of the Dog Poop Initiative prior to that? And have you ever used it either as such or in a different metaphorical sense?
So I haven't heard about it before I listened. So that would be a no. Have I used not this with these words and visual, but I have used the psychological meaning of, I heard, and I think I used hot potato before, not as smelly as the dog food.
Yeah. She didn't know we were going to put that on in the intro, but
and some other ones. So not in this context and in this way.
Have
the
you
meaning yet?
Have you experienced that phenomenon where rather than just addressing an issue, people go out of their way to skirt around it?
Oh, of course. I've done it myself too. Talking about stories, I have my own first story, kind of like that. With so I grew up in an apartment building. No, my husband says it wasn't apartments. Those were condos because we owned them. So in a building where we owned the apartments.
Yes, thank you. Accuracy is our hallmark here. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Okay.
My husband will be proud of me. So I lived on the 4th floor, and on the 2nd floor there was this really kind lady who took care of me, sometimes babysit me. And I failed in doing something. I can't remember as a little girl what I did. But I avoided that door like dog poop for a very long time. And I was so scared that she's going to open the door and she's going to ask me or see me or anything. I remember for a long time, well, how long was it in a child's life? Probably a few weeks until I decided, okay, it's time to pick it up.
Yeah.
So I went and knocked, and I don't know, apologized or did what I needed to do. But yeah, so that was my very first memory of avoiding. Yes, we're born with it.
Well, I think years ago I did a talk about I called it "What Color is Your Fire Hydrant?" And it was about communication, and it was based on the idea that, fire hydrants have colors that mean something, which you can go read my blog post on that later. That'll be.
I did actually already.
Nice.
But this is kind of, so after I did that, I just couldn't stop seeing fire hydrants, and I couldn't stop seeing colors. And I feel like now that Rex has introduced me to the Dog Poop Initiative, unfortunately, I think I'm going to be cursed with seeing dog poop everywhere.
It's everywhere.
And this is awesome because now you go on the other side of the horse. It's the curse of the knowledge that I do work with engineers a lot who, as we all three know, have a lot of knowledge and they're proud of knowing a lot. And what stops them in their track when I ask them about the curse of their knowledge. So a little bit what you're talking about, that once we know something, now it becomes so obvious that now what we do. So
yeah, we don't see another side or another way to look at it because we know what's right.
And the other curse is that we get so familiar seeing, just use dog poop in this case, that we assume that everybody else is seeing it.
Mm.
Yeah. So tell us then a little bit more about, you just said you work with engineers. I introduced you as the engineer whisperer because that's what it says on your website.
And her husband's an engineer, right?
No, he's not.
You made that up, buddy. That's fake news.
Oh, man.
He would like to be. He behaves like one.
So tell us, tell us, Andrea. Don't let us put fake information out here. Let's let you tell us what do you do as the engineer whisperer? What does that mean?
Oh, what does that mean? That I whisper? No, and that I work with amazing human beings who happen to be engineers, and who want to take the transformation of not just being great engineers, but impactful engineers. And it's an amazing work. I don't even call it a job because it's something that I'm so passionate about. And
so how did you end up as the engineer whisperer? What made you get into that?
There's a story behind it, right? Like,
that term was actually a gift from a friend who knows me well and knows about my work, and she mentioned it once, and I gracefully accepted it and started using it. So it's not a term that I came up with, it was a gift. But the story of why I started working with engineers is because when I started becoming a coach, I was working in HR, and I thought that all my HR friends were going to be so excited to support me in my growth, but they weren't. They were very risk averse, and they didn't jump on my offer to help them out, to start work with them, to learn. So I reached out to my engineering friends. Actually, I reached out to them to see if they know someone else who would want to work with me. And I want to say all of them who I reached out to raised their hands and said, can I do it? I mean, I can refer you, but can I be the one who's going to work with you? So soon after I realized, oh, I like working with engineers. And I've always been around them. I always found them. I have a story of when I arrived at Boeing, and my first job, my first all-team meeting in Seattle in the big, huge conference room there. With I don't know how many people in there. And I went, the only available seating was in the very front, or they were sending me there. I can't remember, but I ended up at the very first table, and across from me sat down a gentleman, and we just started talking. We didn't introduce ourselves. It wasn't about, hey, what's your name, where you work. I don't remember how it started, but we started talking about something totally different. Ended up in Europe. His daughter was in Europe. I'm from Europe. We were going on a tangent till somebody rang the bell, turned the lights off, and the meeting was on. So after that, he left early. So I didn't even know who he was, where to find him again, nothing. Next thing I know, I started working, and then somebody said, oh yeah, let's not give names. That was that person. And then I ended up, kind of indirectly working with his team and with him. And we became friends after that. Turns out it was an engineer.
So you were working at Boeing in HR, right? And
yes,
and you decided, did you decide at that point that, hey, I want to kind of be on the coaching side of human resources, or you decided, no, I'm gonna go and do my thing, and then you thought you were going to do it with HR folks, but then transition to engineers? What was the timing on there? I'm curious.
Neither of those, Sean. Because life is not as black and white as it calculated. At least mine hasn't been. No, I was looking for something different, some more fun and excitement in my career. And I was just looking around, and I found. I was sent to a workshop. I think, yeah, to a 3-day workshop down in St. Louis. And at that workshop, I met a woman who was an executive coach within Boeing. We became friends. She told me about her job, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds interesting. What is this thing? Like, I've never heard. I've worked at Boeing for a long time, but I never knew this group existed." And I ended up asking her to be my coach, because I wanted to see what this is about, to experience this. And I was going through this career. I wanted to change careers, and I didn't know how to do it. So she offered to help, and I said, "Oh yeah, great, yeah, let's do it." Curious anyway. So I wanted to experience it on my own. I needed anyways. So she really helped me as the coachee, the client.
So that was your exposure to coaching.
To coaching, yeah.
Yes, that was my exposure, and I realized on my own skin, oh, this really works. She really helped me make, now looking back, the right decision and say no to some other mentors and influential people in my life who wanted me to take a different path. And I'm so glad that thanks to her, I could say, no, that really doesn't match with what I want to do. You don't understand me. So just that clarity, it was amazing. It really helped me. So after that, I don't know, I just had this thought of, maybe I can be part of that team. And then the team, I interviewed a few of the members, and the word was that, you need credentials to get in here. And I didn't have any credentials.
Papers.
Yeah. And then that motivated me even more. I'm like, okay, this is the closed member club. I want to get in even more. And I always did things on my own and on my way. So how I really started it, I decided that my brother's wedding was coming up. So I decided that when I go back to Europe, I'll tell everyone that I'm a coach. Nice. And I did. And I almost picked up a couple as well. The woman was owning a bakery back home. So if I would have been local, they were ready to hire me. We just couldn't figure out the logistics right there with me being in the U.S. And I remember I had no business. I had no idea what I'm doing. I had
listen, we know a guy who just, he's been doing it long enough. He just does whatever he wants. I feel like you're channeling that. I'm going to be a coach.
Yeah. I think I did. I think I channeled Steve, because everyone I talked to believed me, even my best friend, who I confessed later that, this is really not happening. But I got that feeling of, but if this could be happening, and that feeling of, not that I don't need the education and the certification, but that internal feeling of, this is my talent, kind of coming back to my roots, coming back to who I am. Yeah. And after that little experiment, I came home, and my husband, who always tells the truth, says, I always knew that you're going to be a great coach. You've been doing this for years, since I know you, or even before. So go for it.
Now, if he had said that to you before, it wouldn't have made a difference. But these random strangers that you met overseas wanted to use you as a coach, and so now your confidence was bolstered.
Well, I think I didn't tell him of this experiment of mine, little experiment. Mm-hmm. I did not disclose that because I didn't know how it's gonna go. Yeah. So after that, I came back and I told him about, I did this, and he wasn't surprised.
Yeah.
So now, now you are a coach because you've declared it to be. And
did
I
you
know
do
that
the training then, or
I did though. That just yes, I did. I went through the certification program, 18 months, and I'm certified, and then I also accredited by the International Coaching Federation.
Awesome. Oh,
And,
that's
and
great.
so for somebody listening that maybe doesn't know, well, what would a coach do with an engineer? How what's your elevator pitch? What do you do? What do you whisper to engineers? Is it quadratic equations?
Probably not.
Pythagorean theorem.
Well, let me tell you through a story of what I do.
Yeah.
When I was little, I used to spend my summers at my grandma's house. She lived 12 kilometers from the town, in a little village, in a house with a big yard, big garden, with animals, dogs, chicken, ducks. And she was a storyteller. She lived through the war, and I loved asking her about the war and her experience. So I remember one afternoon I was sitting on the couch, and she probably just finished one of her stories, and she turned to me and said, "Andrea, now I have a question for you." And I remember as a child being so excited. "Oh, Grandma has a question for me! Like, what can I answer?" And she asked me a question that changed the trajectory of my life. So she asked, "Andrea, what do you think people will do after I die?" And I remember without hesitation.
And you were how old?
I was before first grade. So
yeah. Okay. That's a heavy question to ask a kindergartner.
Yeah.
Let me finish and then see if it's still a heavy one. So she asked me that question, and I remember to this day, without any hesitation, just going into, "Well, Grandma, when you're going to pass away, we're going to have the biggest party at your house. Everybody's going to come in the village who knows you, who knew you, who interacted with you. We're going to have music. We're going to have good food, and we're going to celebrate you. We're going to celebrate all the people that you impacted, that you've spoken with." And I remember my grandma's face kind of looking at me, kind of puzzled of, well, this wasn't the right, and this wasn't the answer I expected of her.
Yeah.
And then she turned that look into a big smile and said, "Tell me more." So she allowed me to just, again, tell her as with a young heart, without any judgments, to just tell her how I felt about her. And part of the story is that she was the one whom I felt always comfortable with being. I had kind of a situation at home with my mom and my dad. So when I was with my grandma, it was like I was free. I was independent. I was allowed to do things that I wasn't allowed at home. And the environment, she was the wisest woman to this day that I've ever met, although she just had four grades of schooling. But how she treated people, and everyone came by, didn't even knock on the door. She had literally an open gate, like we say that in corporate, an open door for everyone, and people came and always checked on her. She lived by herself and helped her out. So in my mind as a child, it was everything that grandma gave to others will be just returned to her, and it will be a celebration of her life, of how she impacted everybody else around her. Right. I didn't think about the passing as something sad.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
So in that moment, and from that moment on, that was the first time that I can remember that feeling of someone being with you, truly with you, and listening to you, and you're being heard, and moreover, you're safe to say whatever you mean to say. It's not censored. It's not going to be judged. It's not going to be held against you. So what I do with engineers is I create that space that grandma created with me. And I invite them in to come in and just sit down and just have a conversation, and I will listen. And I will listen in a way that grandma taught me to listen. And they feel that, and then they start talking. I had experiences where engineers who talk a lot quiet down, and those who quiet down, who are quiet, they speak up. So in that space, they're heard and listened to, and then together we solve obstacles.
And there's, like, with your grandma, there's no wrong answers. There's a kind of an irony in that, because engineers like to always try to find the right answer.
Yeah.
But I remember reading, you wrote about this story. I think it was one of your first articles on your website. There's a picture. The picture you used was the picture of your actual grandma's house, right?
It's not. It's from the same village, but
same
it's
village.
not.
Okay. Yeah. What do you think she expected you to say? Do you think she had an expectation?
I don't even know why she asked me that question, just like you. Where did that question come from? I remember being very curious about the war, about what happened. And I remember still to this day stories that she told me about how one day her neighbor, who was Jew, said hi, and the next day she said hi to that same person who'd been taken away, been walking away, and never to meet that person again. So I think death was part of, and dying was part of our conversations, because it was part of life, and it was part of her life. My grandpa passed away, and then that was, and her first husband died in the war. Sorry, go ahead.
How long was she? Did she live after that question to you?
So let's say I was 5, 9, 10 years. She died when I was in high school.
Okay.
And I don't know if we said, what country was this in?
This was in Romania. I am Hungarian.
Yes. That's some rich history there.
So I'm actually looking at it right now. You're when you wrote about this, and kind of when you just described it, but particularly when you wrote about it, you used the phrase, hear my heart singing, kind of a lot. There's a recurrence there. So I guess that's would you say that is the core then of what you do as the engineer whisperer, is you're trying to get those hearts to sing and find out what song it is?
What I do is I just create space for any singers to show up.
But yeah, you said you make great engineers become impactful engineers.
Because we all know how to sing.
Yeah.
We all secretly sing in the shower. We sing somewhere. It doesn't matter of the voice. It's a skill. It's an act that we all do because it creates joy. It's a psychological joy. So if we wouldn't be told that our voices are bad, we would be all singing. But then at some point in our life, somebody says, "Oh, quiet down, too loud. That's not the right voice. Not good enough. I heard better."
That's good. Yeah.
So forth. So we shut that down.
And that's where we're going to have to shut it down for this episode. We've already gone a little long, so I think that's a good spot to stop, and we'll pick it up again next time.
Yeah. You don't want to listen for too long. But there was so much good material. She keeps going. We have a great conversation. So we decided to break it up and have another part 2 episode that you can check out. So that's going to be awesome.
You know what this reminds me of?
What does it remind you of, Sean?
You remember Lucille Ball?
Yes.
I love Lucy.
Yeah, we're gonna date ourselves here.
So what people might not know, and this predates both of us, just to be clear.
Just to be clear, they were old when we were kids. Okay.
Lucy had a bunch of shows, but she was actually one of the first podcasters in the world.
Get out of here.
In 1964, she started doing a show on CBS Radio where she would travel around with a reel-to-reel tape recorder to different celebrities, and she would just have conversations with them.
Wow.
And then they would air those conversations. They were about 15, 17, 20 minutes long. It aired on CBS Radio. And recently, SiriusXM created a channel dedicated to airing them back to back.
No way.
And now you can actually go and get them as a podcast.
Huh.
But she would have some of those conversations would span more than the 15 minutes. And so she would say, is it okay if we can continue this conversation tomorrow? And they would cut it and they would pick it up the next day. So that's what we're going to do here with Andrea.
Okay.
We are going to pick it up next
tomorrow. Which may or may not be tomorrow.
And more good stuff to come. We're going to talk about idea parties. And how
everyone loves a party.
That's right.
And everyone wants their idea solved or problem. Oh yeah, she doesn't call them problems.
Now we got to remove the obstacles.
Yes.
All right.
Oh, yeah,
well, we're gonna remove us as the obstacle to you getting along with your day. And
let's